Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. The other case we want to talk about was the Supreme Court's ruling striking down President Biden's unilateral $430 billion blanket student loan cancellation. President Biden decried that ruling, but now he's also moving to put a Plan B in place. Alicia, can you tell us about that?
So under his Plan B, actually it's a multiple step plan. I think we've written that this is essentially to forgive loans on the installment plan. You saw him forgive about $40 billion in loans last Friday by just making some tweaks to these income-based repayment plans. And what he did was basically say, current students in these plans, all those periods that they weren't making payments when they were in deferment or forbearance, now those can count toward their 10 to 25 years of making payments. So now just to back up a little bit, the Obama administration and Congress in 2010 during Obamacare, what they did is cap monthly payments at 10% of the borrower's discretionary income and allowed that to be forgiven after 10 to 25 years. And so Obama in 2014 actually extended these plans to all borrowers before they were just supposed to be available to new borrowers in 2014. Now, what the Biden administration is proposing to do is to sweeten these plans even more. So he would cap the monthly payments at 5% of discretionary income. And discretionary income is currently defined as 125% of the poverty line. He would increase that to essentially, I think, 225%, and which would be around $32,800. So borrowers who earn less than $32,800 wouldn't have to make any payments at all. And now, all these loans would be forgiven again after 10 to 25 years. So in many cases, borrowers won't be paying very de minimis amounts, perhaps thousands of dollars less each year than they would under the standard 10-year repayment plans, because these plans would be capped at a level of their monthly income. And there would really be no, sadly to say, that it's a disincentive to earn more, because if you earn more, you're just going to end up paying more toward your student loans. And it's actually also an incentive for colleges to pile on more debt on these students, because they know that much of the debt will invariably be forgiven after 10 to 20 years. And again, the cost of these plans will be, again, accrue over the next 10 to 20 years as borrowers aren't making the required payments. Already about over half of borrowers aren't even paying down their debt under the Obama plans, okay? And so there's actually a Trump administration analysis that about $500 billion in student debt would just end up being forgiven under the existing Obama plans. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated that the Biden sweeteners would amount to about $270 billion. But I think that even that is probably a low ball. I think you see the Penn-Wharton model estimates that it could cost over $400 billion, depending on how many people who are actually end up enrolling in these plans. And I think that a lot more will enroll in the plans than the administration or CBO estimates, because there's going to be every incentive to reduce your monthly payments and your overall payments. Why not take that $200 or $300 you're saving, since you're not going to be actually under these plans, you don't accrue interest, take that money and just invest in the stock market. That's what a savvy borrower would do, financially savvy. So even if you're not struggling to make payments, it would be financially smart to take the money that you're not having to pay and invest it in a higher yielding product, or even to use it, put it toward your mortgage payments or such. So I think the cost of this quote unquote Plan B is going to dwarf the cost of the Biden administration's loan cancellation that was struck down by the Supreme Court last month.
The incentives that are being projected are always what strike me in the face when we have this conversation, because it seems like the message, Colin, from President Biden, from the Democratic Party, progressives in the Senate, is that we will figure this out. We will figure out a way to get this student loan cancellation done eventually. And so, to Alicia's point, if you're sitting in a university president's office trying to figure out how much to raise tuition, you can go a little bit higher with the hopes that the federal government will wipe some of it away later. Or if you're a student trying to decide between an expensive Ivy League school and an in-state state college and doing that math in your head, adding up those 4 years of tuition payments, you have an incentive to go big with the hopes that the federal government will come bail you out later. And again, just to underline what Alicia said, if you're someone with student loans, are you going to be paying more than the minimum that you have to if you are still hoping for the forgiveness to come, whether it's in the Biden administration or the next one?
Right. I think there's no question this is just an unbelievably huge new entitlement program that Biden administration has been very explicit that they are very committed to making happen for people. And, I think on all of these sort of rational calculations that people are making on repaying their student loans, I completely agree with Alicia. And I guess I'm kind of old-fashioned on this issue. I think education is extremely important. It's probably the most important thing that anyone can spend money on. So saying to a generation of young people, hey, don't worry, you don't need to pay back your loans. Go ahead and buy that cute dress you saw, or go ahead and get yourself a new phone and a bigger TV and invest your money elsewhere. No worries. We don't want you to be too burdened with that big debt from your education. I just think it's honestly kind of despicable and bad for the country, and in so many ways goes so far beyond the $400 billion cost of the program and really touches on core aspects of how Americans approach their lives and responsibilities. Now that the Supreme Court has said that people have to pay their debts, you have the spectacle of students crying and wondering to newspapers how they're ever going to be able to make ends meet. So maybe it would just be nice if no one paid for advanced higher education at all, and also, by the way, I'd like private chef and a pony. So, I don't really mean to make light of it, but people need to take this a little bit more seriously, I think.
Alicia, we'll give you the last word, but what are the prospects for another legal challenge if the first student loan forgiveness plan was do it all in one fell swoop and the new one is forgiveness on the installment plan? Is there a real prospect that the administration is going to the point where it is crossing the line where another plaintiff could come up and the Supreme Court would say, well, we really meant it last time?
Right. So I think the issue here would all again be the same one with the flat out loan forgiveness, the $10,000 to $20,000 in loan forgiveness that a court just struck down. The issue there is finding a plaintiff. Now, I think the student loan servicers would probably still have the student loan servicers who challenged the Biden forgiveness, which would be Mohella, the Missouris. The income-based repayment plans would also impose administrative burdens on them and could also result in less fee revenue to the extent that they get paid for the total dollars that they service or other how the payments are structured. I think the legal arguments against these new repayment plans would actually come under the whole major questions doctrine, which is part of what the Supreme Court invoked to strike down the loan forgiveness. Now, this means that Congress must explicitly authorize any actions or executive actions of major political and economic significance. Congress didn't here, right? And if you go back to the Obama administration, actually in Obamacare, it actually set out specifically the structure of these repayment plans. And this was, again, the Obama plans, at least at the outset, were actually legislated. Now, Biden is essentially rewriting the Obama plans. And so I think there's a statutory issue, but also the constitutional issue of the major questions doctrine. And it's just a matter of whether a plaintiff will be allowed standing to sue.
Thank you, Alicia and Colin. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of Potomac Watch.